Do you know that when siblings are in conflict, either in your home environment or among your children, it causes you a lot of pain and distress? Sibling rivalry is something that has affected different families and has caused catastrophic consequences. However, if you're able to, as a mother, see your children playing nicely, getting along well, fighting well, that is such a relief and it's a joy. Siblings fight. I've fought with my brother so many times. I've fought with my sister so many times. But it comes a time when one needs to recognize that you are stronger together rather than being split apart. As a mother, I have seen my children grow. And one thing that I was always praying within my heart is to see them grow in love for each other so that they would be kind and gentle and loving towards each other rather than what I had seen in many other scenarios where there has been a lot of sibling rivalry, sometimes hatred, and it has actually cascaded into adult hatred and family alienation and things like that. Now, of course, I know some people are affected by this, and if you are perhaps affected by this either because of your own family as when you were a child or the family where you have your own children, my heart goes out to you. But I want you to remember something. The fact that this happened, it is not your fault. There are certain things that one could have done at the time, and there are still things you can do now. As long as there is life, there is hope, and there are things you can do. So, when it comes to relationships, mothers are key to every relationship. They are like the relationship manager. They manage the relationship between themselves and their spouse, the relationship between themselves and each child, and the relationship between each of their own children. So, assuming you have two children, maybe you just have this one relating to that one. But if you've got five children, my goodness, that's a lot of relationship management going on. And of course, if you've got more, that's a little bit more challenging. However, we know that when we have good relationships in an environment, our well-being is well catered for. Like you all know, I'm always talking about the four aspects of our well-being: spirit, mind, soul, and body. In this situation, your soul, that's the seat of your emotions. Your mind does your thought process and belief process, the memories you form. These are the parts that are really nourished. And of course, growing up, I had this quote that was said over and over again when we were in school, Sunday school. It would say, the family that prays together stays together. So, of course, there is a spiritual element there where you are enhancing your spiritual well-being when everybody is in accord. What I have found that have really, really helped, and this is interacting with so many mothers, and also what I tend to do in my own space as a mother, is you as a mother are an example. Your children are always looking at you. They see the way you relate with yourself. They see the way you relate with others, and they try to emulate it. Now, something very particular about our beautiful children is that they always look for at what you do, but then they pick up on the bad habits. I don't know how many of you have found that. Children, they pick up on those bad habits and then they emulate it, and you're like, don't do that. And they're like, well, you just did that, mom. Do you get it? It's so funny, but that's what they do. And we need to recognize that. So, for example, I live in a place where I'm not surrounded by my family, my siblings, my parents, but there is the effort to reach out, contact them, speak with them, relate, remember their birthdays, things like that. So certain things, of course, are very important. I remember when I'm speaking to my children, and this is another thing showing by example. When you speak to your children about your own childhood, my goodness, it blows their mind. Children love stories. That is why bedtime stories are like the best times for most children. But then When you're telling them real life stories, not how Goldilocks went to the forest and lived in the house of the three bears. No. Sometimes that they kind of outgrow that and they're like, oh, not again. They want to hear about you. They want to know about how you grew up, what you were doing when you were their age. So I was sharing with my children about my own upbringing and my childhood days. And when I share with them some of the crazy things we did as children, some of the daring things we did, some of the impulsive things we did, and how our personalities, that's between me and my siblings, were playing into our ability to just be, the children were so intrigued. I remember after, of course, telling them these stories every now and again. It's not a regular thing, but sometimes I just mention it. I noticed something. They started to say, Mommy, tell us the chronicles of Uncle or the chronicles of Auntie, and it was just, that's what they named it. And it was so beautiful. So the first time they were going to meet their uncle, they said, oh, Mommy, we can't wait. Oh, the chronicles of Uncle. I said, well, since you're going to meet Uncle, why don't you ask Uncle about the chronicles? And it was so beautiful being able to see that. So that kind of fostered that sibling love, connection, and accord. And the funny thing about it is this is me bringing my children to meet their uncle for the first time after over a decade. So I'd not even seen my brother for like a decade, but it was as soon as we saw each other, oh, let's go. That is something that I'm thankful for. It's not my doing. It is the grace of God, and I'm so grateful for it. Another second thing that you can do when it comes to fostering love between siblings is having open discussions. Express emotions that are suppressed and repressed cause more damage to your well-being and to your relationships. There is a saying where I come from. It says, so when somebody does something to you and you express it, it shows that you love the person. So of course, if someone does something to you and all you do is, there is a problem. That's the thing. Many times we say, okay, I'm someone that does not like conflict, so I will just, that is a suppression of your emotions. Of course, when you are angry, that doesn't mean that you need to spill everything out in that state of anger. In that state, take a few breaths, calm yourself down, and probably take this advice. This advice I got from my grandmother. She said, when you're angry, take a glass of water, take a sip, fill your mouth with the water and don't swallow it. Keep the water in your mouth until the anger passes. Why? Because if you're angry and you're about to say something, with water in your mouth, you're most likely not to, you would not be able to say it without spilling the water everywhere. So just hold the water in your mouth, let the anger pass, and then you swallow, and then you say what you want to say. Say it in a way that is relating. Okay. So of course, there is always a mix of emotions when you have more than one person. Even one person can be angry with himself. Not to talk of when you have more people, because everybody has got their different personalities, their different belief systems, their different ways of looking at certain things. And so it's so important that we all recognize where we are, where each person is. And as relationship manager, mother, you are such a force in this thing. Allow them to openly discuss, oh, I'm not happy with what you did today. Oh, this is how it made me feel. You see, when you're discussing, it's good to express how what happened made you feel. And that is a very good way of letting the person see you, not from a high authority figure, but from a place of vulnerability. And the other person can say, but when you also said that thing to me, Even though you were angry, it made me feel this way. And as the discussion goes to and fro in a respectful manner, and I put there respectful, very important, you start to see that a resolution can be made. Okay. So I remember my father would come whenever we had maybe a family meeting or a discussion, he was encourage each and every one of us to get a pen and paper. And when we're having a discussion, maybe making a big decision, he would say, so everybody would take their turns to speak, or maybe we're trying to resolve something. He would say, okay, you can take your time to take your turn to speak. But while the person who is speaking is doing his or her own thing, and you have something that pops into your head, write it down. So when it's your turn to speak, you can then speak. And of course, everybody sat down. We're all in, like, say, the living rooms, all sat down. Nobody's standing and hovering and puffing and muscling their way through the discussion. No raising of voices, all calm. So that is one very good way when you have this open discussion, letting yourself be seen and heard and expressing your feelings as well. That's the second. The third thing is to allow expression of emotions. And that kind of ties in with the open discussion because we're all emotional beings. We know what it's like when we have got so much bottled in. It's not great. There are some people who are talkers, and I'm not wanting to generalize, but some people have said things like females or people who have more feminine energy want to talk, and people that have more masculine energy are more are less talkers, but maybe more doers. So, of course, in a conflict situation, the person with the more masculine energy might want to just go for a walk, go to the gym, get out of that situation for that period. And the person with the feminine energy will say, come, 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 you offended me. I want to talk about it right now. Understand. People have got their different styles. And the good thing about us as mothers is that we are able to observe our children, know what kind of styles they have in their expression of emotions. I know that maybe when my daughter is upset, there's a certain thing she does. When my son is upset, there's a certain thing he does. And as a matter of fact, when I see that dynamic, I start to think, all right, so how do we navigate this situation? Now, this is you as a mother, not being a helicopter parent, but being a person that is fostering the relationship, the communication, the expression. Okay. So your job is not to go and resolve the conflict, leave the conflict for them to resolve. You just guide them. You just be there, observing and seeing what's going on, making sure that they are guided. I am Dr. Dinny. I am the award-winning mom empowerment coach. I'm a family doctor, international speaker, best-selling author of the book, Every Mom is a Super Mom, and your host on the Wellbeing for Mothers show. This is a show where we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly parts of motherhood, the things we can do on a daily basis to improve our well-being, and also practically transfer those tactics and tools to our children as well. Very importantly, if you've not already, subscribe, download this episode, share with others, and most importantly, let me know what you think. Always leave a review. Okay, now that comes to the next part. Now, this one is very, very important because we get that a lot as mothers, and that is to listen and reflect back. Listening is such an important skill in communication. My grandmother used to say something, you have got 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use them accordingly. So listen more, speak less. In this kind of scenario, your children who are in maybe a conflict, someone did something or did not do something, mommy, this person did this, and the other one comes, mommy, and it judges the matter to you. Sometimes, and this is something I've seen a lot of the time, especially say culturally, they're like, you did that to your big brother. Oh, apologize right now. Or you did that to your big sister. You have to do something, or the big sister does that. But he's just a baby now. How could you do that to him? Stuff like that. That is when we are passing judgment and it shuts the child down. So at that point, they feel, oh my goodness, I'm not seen, I'm not heard. And then they start to resent their sibling, thinking that they are the cause of the problem. But when we listen and we reflect back, that is such a gift. And I'll give you an example. When you have your child comes to you and say, Mommy, this person, my sibling did this, my sister did this to me, and it's not fair. It's not fair, and I want it now. And then the sister comes and says, oh, but Mommy, no, he took this by force, and I told him not to, and it's very rude of him. And I'm so you listen, pay attention to them. Okay. You can turn to the first and say, oh, you mentioned that your sister did this. How did that make you feel? Oh, it made me feel so angry. How do you think it made her feel? So it's like you are now a coach. So this is you, your relationship manager, remember, and you're also a relationship coach. So you're getting them to reflect. You're reflecting back what they said, but then you're getting them to reflect and to voice out or express what their thoughts are.